This is like double excitement for me, man. I feel like I have not recorded a video in so long. We had no chapter and or episode. You know what it is to not have a chapter or an episode to talk about as a One Piece YouTuber? I mean, you start going crazy, man. You start losing your mind, but here we are, man. Because this is the 22nd anniversary of the series this week, man. Specifically the anime adaptation. The 22nd anniversary of the anime adaptation, which is what we're celebrating with this. Every single Saturday we come on here, talk about the greatness, and something that's very interesting, fascinating, or something that's personally impacted me, man. And this week's content might be a combination of all three. Because what we're going to be talking about today is an outlier within the series. Something that you will not see in any of the other 1,028 chapters or 995 episodes. It is a one-shot episode. And for anyone who knows me, y'all know how much I love my episodic storytelling, right? And stuff that comes from that within my favorite stories. You know, I think it's the one thing that links so many of my favorites, even in the medium of video games. It's the reason why the stuff that stuck with me for so many years within my favorite games are my favorite side quests. That's why Final Fantasy VI, FF7, Trails, all of these things still stick with me. These little moments where it embodies the bigger picture, but in just a very short amount of time. And I think the reason why I adore that so much and adore seeing it before my very eyes and experiencing it is because it's something that it's very hard for me to do personally. I'm very bad at summarizing, as you can tell, with the video length, right, and whatnot for a majority of my videos. But it's genuinely very difficult to summarize. And so when I see others be able to tell the stories that they want to tell, when I watch Violet Evergarden, when I watch Neon Genesis Evangelion, I'm like, holy flagnarts, the way that they're able to do this in a 22 to 23 minute episode to episode format is incredible to me. And at the end of the day, One Piece is very similar to that. A bunch of self-contained stories that have overarching plot elements and overarching threads, character arcs and whatnot that are carrying them from island to island. But most of them, if not all of them, are their own self-contained thing that you can still experience and gain a lot of emotion out of just by watching that, right? But it helps, of course, to have everything leading up to it. But today I want to talk about something that literally I could show this episode to someone who's never even seen the series before, and I think they would gain some sort of idea as to who the characters are. And what I love so much about this is a couple of years ago, I went on this spree of Recon pieces where I just watched a whole bunch of specials, OVAs, and whatnot the series released over the years. Some really, really good stuff. TV specials that are lost to the flagnars, man. And I found them, watched them, and they were magnificent. But one of my favorite things about that was it really did give me that vibe of the episodic storytelling nature that I adore so much. You know, that's the reason why I love so many of these stories. You know, they start off as stuff that I just watch one episode a night and whatnot. If I start off watching an episode a night for a lot of these stories, they're going to end up being favorites, right? You know what I'm saying? Like One Piece, Gintama, Violet Evergarden, you know, Aria the Animation. A lot of great stories where you just watch one a night, go to bed, come back the next day, one a night, and until it starts getting crazy, and then you start binging and whatnot. But it's always fun when it starts off like that, and that's the vibe that those TV specials gave me. And so there is one particular one-shot that gives off that same vibe within the confines of the canon story. Because you can find the G8 arc, right? You can find some of the Rainbow Mist, all this other stuff that's very small and self-contained, feels episodic because of how small the arcs are. But this is genuinely one episode and one chapter. Chapter 22 and episode 18. Now, the interesting thing about the Gaimon story in both the anime and the manga are the differences in the anime and the manga. In the manga, it's used more as exposition in a way to reveal information in a very interesting and entertaining way to the reader. while also giving them something that, you know, an adventure with just Luffy and Nami. Of course, building that emotional connection between the two as we slowly build towards Baratier and Arlong Park and where all that leads between the two characters. But also when it comes to finding out more about Luffy is a character, Nami is a character, and their connections to Gaimon. And what's very interesting about the way that both the anime and the manga handle is the themes of treasure. Because the Orange Town arc, the main basis of that is what your treasure is. Luffy's treasure being his hat. We know what Nami treasures, we know what Buggy treasures, Choo Choo, you know, all those things. That entire arc, Orange Town, is based on treasure. And so to have Luffy and Nami again with the idea of treasure, except this time, it's with Gaimon having defended this treasure that he's tried to get for so long, and he was not able to attain it. Not only was he not able to attain it because he was stuck in this chest, but when Luffy goes up there and he climbs, and he trolls him, and he's like, I'm not giving this to you. And in a very amazing character moment for Luffy in terms of showing exactly who he is, he knows humans so well. And it goes back to that scene in episode 3 that really made me fall in love with the series whenever Kobe hit him. And you see the complexity, you know, the hints of complexity to his character and how he just understands humans. And it's like he has this absurd optimism. He's almost illogical at a lot of different points when it comes to the goat with the coat, right? But then you get moments like this and you're like, man, you know 110% that he firmly believes, and you believe it yourself. You're like, nah, he's gonna become the king of the pirates. So much so that Gaimon believes the same thing. Once he sees Luffy does this, he's like, yo, this isn't some random idiot out on the seas. Like, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's about. He understands people. He's like, yo, you're really a good dude. When Luffy's like, yo, the treasure chests were empty. And it's like showcasing, what about if you did do something for so long and things ended up empty? How would you feel about that? And we see Gaimon's answer in being, man, at the very least, I still have the individuals that have followed me on this journey at all. And I think it is a representation of, you know, how Oda stated that he's not going to have the One Piece treasure be the friends he made along the way. But Gaimon's story is literally the friends he made along the way are his treasure. And it's just a very interesting one-shot. And like I said, there's differences in the anime and in the manga. Because in the anime, it is very, very funny. But they leave out certain key points of exposition that they instead put in other episodes, right? Here, it mainly does feel like a filler section. But it feels like the end of a movie. Because Oda's so good at payoff and farewells, when Gaimon's like, man, go out there and become the king of the pirates, I know that you can do it. It generally does feel like the end of a movie, you know. You sail off and everything. It's crazy. But it is a very just heartwarming, entertaining, hilarious in the anime. Because Usopp's in there in the anime, and Zoro has a little more interactions there as well. But it's mainly the Usopp and Nami interactions with Gaimon that just make it absolutely hilarious in the anime. And very heart-wrenching as well, because whenever you see the truth that the treasure chests were empty, it legit, you get to see the tears on Usopp's face and whatnot, because he understands what that would mean. You know, this is his first adventure, quote unquote, as a pirate. So to see this already is like showing the harsh realities of the pirate life. And it was just very nice for the anime to include Usopp and Zoro there, because in the manga, Usopp hadn't joined yet, as it took place before Secret Village, and Zoro was asleep on the boat the entire time. So, you know, the anime has its own way of doing things, as it always has. But in this one in particular, I liked what the approach that it took in terms of making it more emotional, more, you know, involving all of the crew members. I found it very enjoyable in that aspect. Now, where the manga differs, even though it doesn't have that same type of emotional connection for me, it doesn't well establish that Gaimon heart-wrenching feels in the way that the anime does. It still delivers the awesome character moments with Luffy and Nami. But I definitely felt more emotional watching the anime. That's the first way that I experienced it, so of course, right? But upon reread, the comedy is just as funny as it is in the anime. But one thing that was very, very fascinating about this chapter is that this is the chapter where Nami starts fixing his hat, right? Where we see that in the anime in Orange Town. In this chapter, this is actually where Nami fixes his hat. Not only that, and see, once again, going back to the whole thing about treasure and how this is so, when it comes to Oda as a storyteller, he just gets it, man. Like, he understands when it comes to, bringing things full circle and introducing both sides of the argument, right? Individuals that can attain their treasure, that do have their treasure, and then others that spend their entire lives trying to get this thing and they don't make it, right? And they have to place their ambitions, the ambitions that they once had, on others. So in the manga, this is where we find out about the red line and the grand line. And what I find so interesting about the way this is handled in the manga is the way this exposition is told. It's told by Nami, of course, which we would later find out, what her dream and everything is. But it's really cool knowing that, we have this map of the grand line. We have this map of what's going to happen in the future. This is our destination, is to make it to the grand line. What I find fascinating about the way that it's handled in the manga is that we're introduced to the red line. Nami's sitting here giving this to you in a very passionate way because you understand, like, yo, this is an individual that not only knows about this, but genuinely cares about this. So, like, Gaimon and Luffy are sitting here trying to read the treasure map. They don't understand when the Flagnards, they're seeing. So when Nami starts explaining it to them, and also explaining it to the reader, of like, no, this is the red line, this is the red line. And so you start getting the exposition, but it's done in a very entertaining way. And that's something very important, because you can get info dumps and it won't mean a thing to you. Like, you won't care. But I think that this was the beginnings of already showcasing that the way that Oda was going to give us exposition, the way that Oda was going to give us these info dumps that are important to the overall story, was going to be done in a very entertaining way. Now, so much so that all of us collectively, at the very least on our side of the community, here in the manga reading community, when it comes to the info dumps, that's the stuff that we're looking forward to the most, right? Post-arc content, the stuff that gives us like, oh man, we're going to learn about this and that and this and that, and that's just based on the way that he's written the story, and this was one of the original bases for that. And then that is immediately followed by when Gaimon starts talking about the Grand Line as the pirate's graveyard. And then he starts hyping it up in terms of, man, like, they're broken men, individuals that just by looking at them, you can tell that they've seen terrible things. And so it starts hyping up what we would later see on the Grand Line. And what's very interesting about it is that not only is it hyping it up in terms of, the individuals that come back from the Grand Line, and of course we get more of this once we go into Baratier, and we see individuals that have come back from it and they started doing it. But this was the first, right? This is where we start seeing, like, oh snap, this is our destination. This is the stakes that are at line. Like, yes, we can make it, and that's where the One Piece is. But what are we gonna find when we get there? Like, are we also going to get destroyed in the same type of way? And so it automatically makes it very interesting, and you want to know exactly what the Grand Line is. But what I love so much about this is that Gaimon is saying this. Gaimon is saying how crazy the Grand Line is. And yet he is a dude stuck in a treasure chest in an island where he is surrounded by animals that are extremely unique. Lion pigs. Like the hyenas that just have these very weird body proportions. And it's like he's living on this treasure island surrounded by these very strange and weird looking creatures. He's stuck in a treasure chest, and he's out here hyping up an island, or not an island, a section of the sea that is going to be 40 times crazier than what we're currently seeing on this man's island. Because this was our first exposure to something this nuts. I mean, from the very beginning of the series, you see some crazy stuff, right? You see some very, very strange and outlandish stuff, especially when it comes to the way that Oda draws it in his art style. But this island was our first, like, little garden, quote unquote. We're like, what in the world is going on here? And to know this isn't even on the Grand Line yet, so it's like hyping it up like sweet mother of Flagnards. By the time that you get up there, what are you, like, you're already seeing this here. What are you going to see whenever you get to the Grand Line? And it's just, I love stuff like that, and I love the differences. Because one thing that I really enjoy when looking on differences in the anime and the manga is how they make you feel. That's been a recent discussion when it comes to the way the anime has been handling the current arc. Is that there's some individuals who like it, some others who don't. because they want a full-blown faithful adaptation. Where I differ from that is that I've always enjoyed the creative liberties that Toei takes, because they have the right to do so. And so whenever they give us a product like the Gaimon episode, where even though it is not in that particular chapter or in that episode in the anime where we learn about the Grand Line, the Red Line, or about the Straw Hat being fixed, or even the fact that Usopp and Zoro are there where they weren't there in the manga, while still sticking true to Luffy and Nami being the main stars, them shining the most, and getting the character moments, still sticking true to it. And that is still true to this day in regards to the creative liberties they're taking within Onigashima, though it's not as drastic as adding characters that weren't there in the original thing. But here, with what they're doing with the creative liberties in the current arc in Onigashima, it's like telling these stories out of order, but they're still getting to similar results, but they're emphasizing on certain things, right? Whereas in the manga, let's just say we got a cliffhanger that lets you like think on that cliffhanger for a while. The anime will end on a different cliffhanger that'll make you be thinking about that. Like, oh man, dude, like, yes, or emphasizing more on a certain point to where you're like, man. So it's the different experiences between the anime and the manga that really make this extremely interesting for me. In regards to, as adaptations and just as two different stories when it comes to the anime adaptation and the manga, even though they're still at their core the very same thing, they still go about it, their way of executing it is in a different way. Now, when it comes to why it is I wanted to talk about this today, the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because, like I said at the beginning of the video, I genuinely enjoy episodic stories. The way that any type of thing, which is why I've always enjoyed the movies in this series, which is why I've always enjoyed the TV specials or any of that stuff. The way that I can personally gauge what is a favorite and what's not a favorite is how I feel in the downtime. So, we can all feel similar highs when it comes to the high peaks of a series. Like, whenever you're experiencing the greatest moments of a series, you're like, oh, Flagners, this is amazing, right? Like, this goes in hard. Where it changes for me is how I feel about a series in the downtime. And what I mean by downtime is when the characters are just hanging out, or when they're just receiving information, or when they're just on, like, one little soul adventure, like in the Gaimon arc, or in the Gaimon one-shot episode. How do I feel when I'm watching that? And that is what has always separated my favorites from my non-favorites. Is that even though both my non-favorites that I really enjoy and my favorites that I really enjoy give me the same feelings whenever I'm experiencing the greatest moments, how do I feel whenever I'm experiencing something that is just the series? Like, the Gaimon one-shot is just One Piece. It is the comedy we love, the character moments that make it so endearing, and the very just nuanced way of telling these stories in terms of, having this thing presented in front of you, this new island presented in front of you, and then you start seeing like the real truth being pulled in the back, which of course in this case was about the empty treasures. So what is it? Like, why is it that this still sticks with you? Why is it that a one shot like this can still stick with a viewer, even if it doesn't have overarching, consequences on the rest of the story? The reason why it does is simply because the characters are there. The characters are there being themselves, and the individuals they interact with understand and come to the conclusion that these individuals are special, and that now they can go out and go on this journey, and that he believes in them too. He believes in them the same way that we as the reader or the watcher are also starting to believe that yes, they can go out and they can do this. Like, I believe in them. I enjoy this. I love this. And I think that's where it differentiates between favorite and non-favorite. Is that even in filler, even in stuff that feels like filler, it's still extremely enjoyable because it's the characters that you love and adore so much. And so I think that's why I love this one-shot episode, because it is the representation of that. no real consequences to later on in the story. Sure, in the manga we do get the reveal of the red line and the grand line, but at the end of the day, it's all about the characters, right? And it's another adventure, another story that we get to have with our beloved crew on another adventure. Though it may wrap up in one episode, it's still another journey in this marvelous story, and another opportunity to see them interact, another opportunity to see their hilarious interactions and the very witty ways of going about their dialogue, or going back and forth between Gaimon and Luffy, like the gags that we would see, especially in the anime episode, were spot on hilarious. But that's what really makes series favorites for me. Whenever something like this can have me just as excited to watch it, or just as immersed while watching it as I would while watching one of the peaks in a series, right? And I think not only just for this series, but whenever you feel this way about any series, whenever you're sitting there and you're going through a side quest in a video game, or you're reading like something in a book, to where like a random little one-shot story about the characters, that you just can't get enough of it, right? Where you just want to absorb every single little part of it because you just want to see more with those characters, more with those characters interacting, and another adventure with them. Whatever it is, whether you're re-experiencing it or experiencing it for the first time, as long as you're going on a journey or on a new, some sort of new experience with these characters that you love so much, you'll take it any day of the week. And that to me is why this Gaimon section is so special to this day, because not only is it the only one shot in the series, but it perfectly represents exactly why this series is so special to us, or why specifically it's special to me. And that all I need is our characters going on to a new island, exploring it, being themselves. And that by itself already constitutes being something incredible in my eyes, because I just can't get enough of being with the characters. You know what I mean? So that's all I want to talk about the Gaimon episode today. Thank you so much for watching. This has been another countdown to episode 1000 special here on the channel. I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Have an awesome day. Let me know what y'all think about Gaimon in the comment section down below. Our boy stuck in the treasure chest, man. Someday we'll see him again. And when we do, see, it's probably going to be in the final arc, honestly. It probably is going to be in the final arc, man.